have you again, Helen. Thank you for your patience.
No problem.
Now, we were talking about the KonMari method, and I had read a quote that I got from your Instagram account that read that it's about creating a space that supports you to live your best life. And that's where we ended the conversation. Tell us about it, because I'm really interested in knowing how the KonMari method can help us do that.
Okay, well, the KonMari method is, everyone thinks it's about organizing, right? But it's not really, it is a way of organizing, but we use this as a tool to help people lead a more joyful life. So when you think about it, why do you organize your home, right? You're organizing your home so that it can support you to live the life that you want. So for example, if you wanted to, I don't know, make some muffins, you would just like go to the kitchen and everything would just be laid out. Like, you know, it would just be easy for you to find the muffin pan and all your ingredients, right? And then if you wanted to read a book, maybe you have like a special reading corner. Or if you wanted to do yoga, then you can just like have a space for yoga. So that's what we mean by, you know, you're using the method to help you create a home that supports you to live, you know, your most joyful life. And isn't the most joyful life your best life?
I love that. And two words jump out at me. It's joy and support. Because I'm a firm believer that if you can create a home that supports you, that fosters a better you, that improves your productivity, that just helps you feel at home, then it's a home that it's supportive. It's your home. It gives you joy. It has to have all those ingredients. So when we talk about the KonMari, I have to admit I'm guilty. I thought it was just about organizing, but it obviously isn't.
It's a tool that you use to live the most joyful life. Because if you think about it, sometimes when I meet people and they'll say, I'll say, well, what is your goal? And they're like, okay, so my goal is to have a clutter-free home where I can find my things, right? That's a pretty common goal for people who wanted to get organized. But how is that actually going to change your life? Like, what are you going to do differently? So if you go home today and every single thing you see is in its place, there's not a thing, there's no clutter, you know, every single item you see sparks joy for you, like you've already done this process, then now what? Like, how are you going to spend your time differently at home? Are you going to end up cooking more meals instead of eating out all the time? Are you going to entertain? I mean, not right now because we're quarantined, but you know, is this part of your goal, like to entertain more, or even just like get back into hobbies that you previously, maybe you used to love sewing and you haven't had time for sewing in a long time. Maybe it's time to get back into that. You know, maybe you want to learn a new language. I don't know, like, the world is your oyster, right? Like if your home is not an obstacle and it's actually supporting you. Yeah, like if for some people's, you know, homes are an obstacle and they feel like I used to feel like I don't deserve to go out because I have so much to do at home. And it's not like I'm home organizing all the time. I'm just at home feeling stressed about it.
I like that. I like, you know, you're connecting living a clutter-free life, living an organized life with creating a home that is supporting you. I really like that. What do you find is the hardest thing for people then to, because, you know, we talk about people who are hoarders, people who are disorganized, people who just have a hard time letting go of things. But how do you help them, and how does someone overcome that fear of letting go of things?
I think people think too big. Like instead of thinking about one object at a time, they're thinking about how am I going to get through all this? I don't know where to start. Right. And that's something you see a lot with people who are chronically disorganized. Like I'm not talking about hoarders because hoarders, that's a different situation. I think the difference, you know, from my understanding, the difference between a hoarder and somebody who's chronically disorganized, even though their living environment might look the same, depending on how chronically disorganized, what level they are. There's 5 levels.
Is that a word? I've never heard it.
Chronically disorganized.
Disorganized.
Okay. Yeah. So I can work with somebody who's chronically disorganized up to maybe like a level 2, maybe level 3, but I don't have the capability to go above that. And somebody who is a hoarder, that's not even on the same scale, because a hoarder cannot, a hoarder has psychological attachment that they just cannot let go. Whereas a chronically disorganized person, they can let go, they just don't know where to start.
Okay. But I have to stop you there because you talked about levels.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Are there levels of chronically disorganized person, and what are they? How many levels, first of all?
There's 5 levels.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
what's the difference? How do I know if I'm level 1, 2, 5?
Okay, I think level 1 is this is just my understanding of it. I'm not a specialized like a specialist. There are specialists out there.
Yeah.
So a level 1 is somebody who maybe it's just like a little messier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of like still look like the average person, but just like messier. Maybe they've always been that way. They just don't know where their mail is, and they don't know where things are. It might take them a little while to find things. And then a level 2, you know, is starting to kind of get in the way of living. Like maybe they have things blocking the entrances in the hallway. Yeah, like they might have boxes in living rooms or in hallways, and you know, they might have certain rooms in their home that's not like accessible.
Yeah.
And then level 3, my understanding of it is like when things starts to go wrong, like there's maybe major appliances are broken, and they can't like fix it, and they can't like get to it. Maybe there's like more pets than they can take care of, and like, you know. And then level 4 and level 5, I don't really remember what the difference is, but I remember looking at the different scales of the different levels, and I'm like, okay, I think I have worked with people probably like between a 2 and a 3. I'm not sure, you know, and then that I felt like was where my comfort level is. And then beyond that, it kind of becomes sometimes it might be like a sanitation issue, or I don't know.
Interesting. I've never ever heard of that. And
yeah, there's an organization called the Institute for the Chronically Disorganized, and on their website there's like a quiz and there's charts, so you can look it up, or you can even take the test yourself to see what level you are, if you feel like you might be somewhere on the spectrum.
Okay. Now I feel like I want to take the test. So, what do you feel people have the hardest time letting go of?
I guess things are attached to their memories, because whenever it comes to like something that people can't get rid of, Marie says it's because you have an attachment to the past or a fear for the future. And so I think she's right, because sometimes you keep something because you're like, well, what if I need it one day? It's like, well, you haven't needed it in the last 5 years or the last 10 years. Why do you think you suddenly will need it? And there's a lot of fear there, because if you think about it, they're just stuff, and almost everything is replaceable. So if you got rid of this one thing, like let's say I got rid of a pair of scissors, and then I need it again, I could just go buy another one. Like it's not a huge.
True. I'll tell you where I am. For example, I don't keep a lot of stuff, and I'm with the mentality that if I haven't used it in years, let somebody else use it. And if there's something that I really really like, and I still haven't used it, then I give it. Let's say it's a skirt or a sweater. I may give it 5 more months. It's okay. I talk to them. I say, I'll give you 5 more months, and if I haven't used you, then you're out. But I do have problems keeping things that. Like, for example, we're during a pandemic, and because I haven't kept fabric, now I wish I had fabric so I could help make masks.
I see.
Or I see people that are going like, there's no more elastics. And people are, trying to find elastics, and they're sold out. But I'm sure that there are people that have saved or kept rolls of elastic, and now they're going like, see, this is why I need to keep my stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but at the same time, one could argue, if you really want to make a mask, let's say for yourself, you could use like a napkin, like a cloth napkin, or you might have, tablecloth that you no longer need. You might have bed sheets or pillowcases or even clothing. There's a lot of things you could make the mask out of. And then if you have no elastic, there's methods to make the tie method, right? Yeah, so if you really wanted to, you could.
Yeah. So I guess that's where people come from, right? Like thinking, oh, what if I need it?
Yeah.
I need it in the future, or like, people that may not host too often, and then they had, I don't know, serving trays, and then all of a sudden they have a party and they're like, oh, I should have kept that serving tray. I shouldn't have gotten rid of it.
So when I work with my clients, I ask them to focus on now. So right now, right? So right now, does sewing spark joy for you? Forget about like, do you have time for it? We're not talking about that. We're talking about like, if you have time, would you actually want to sew, right? Then if the answer is yes, then let's look at the fabric and choose to keep the ones that you will want to use for your pending sewing project. Or if it's like a serving tray, if you were like, okay, does entertaining spark joy? And if the answer is yes, because some people don't want to entertain, right? But if you do want to entertain, then it's like, okay, let's imagine, like I recently worked with, not recent, but one of the last clients I worked with before this thing shut down. It's like, okay, so you have all these different items that you could use when you entertain. What kind of party do you think you want to have going forward? Because up to now, she was feeling too overwhelmed to even like be hosting. So then, my client was thinking about, okay, so I definitely want to have like a holiday party for Christmas. Christmas is huge. And she's like, Thanksgiving, we always go to this one family member's home. That's our tradition. So we don't do Thanksgiving at home. So we don't need, so then that helped her eliminate, okay, I don't need to hang on to the Thanksgiving stuff. I can let go of those. And then let's look at Christmas. Then out of all these items you could use for Christmas, which one would you actually want to use? Then when you really look at those individual items, because it's not a keep all or throw all away situation, right? Then she made a nice selection of, these are the items I want to use for Christmas. And then that actually will help her feel more inspired to have the holiday party coming up.
Okay, I get that. It makes sense. So you put it in the best words I could have heard. Just think about the now, focus on now, and not worry too much about what if, or.
Yeah, I mean, if a client's really having a hard time with the what if, then I would ask you, let's say if it's you and I worked with you before you got rid of your fabric and your elastic and all that stuff, right? I would probably ask you, Jessica, in your ideal life, how much space do you want to devote to in your home for the what ifs? Because if we're talking about a small little box and you're like, I can just tuck it away and it just makes me feel so happy knowing that I have it, then I wouldn't be against it. But then if you're like, okay, if I keep everything, that means I need to have an entire guest bedroom dedicated to my hobby items, and that doesn't spark joy, right? So you kind of have to think about your ideal life that way. Like if you can't think about the activity, then think about like, how much space do I want to dedicate to this type of item?
I like how individualized that is. And I think it speaks to me as a designer, because when we design homes, it's not a cookie cutter solution. It's not a one size fits all. You really have to look at the lifestyle of everyone, and that's exactly what you're doing. If somebody cooks a lot, then they're going to have maybe more baking sheets or more spatulas than somebody that doesn't. So it's not, this is the way it is, and here you should only have one tray and one.
Yeah.
So it's very individualized. So it's the same thing with interior design.
Yeah, no, it's the whole process is about what brings you joy, right? So it's not about what brings me joy. What works for me may not work for you. Because we're talking about kitchens. If you have, like, I have worked with two ends of the spectrum. I have worked with a family that has not eaten out in the 6 months prior to me meeting them. And this is before the quarantine. So they just like, as a habit in the family, they cook every single meal. right, at home.
Yeah.
And then I have worked with a bachelor who hardly ever eats at home.
Eats out a lot.
Both of these people, they have a kitchen at home, right? And the kitchen supports them in different ways. And we have to make sure that the kitchen works for them, because my perfect kitchen that works for me, if you come to cook in my kitchen, it might not work for you. And so that's why this method is like, it's all about finding what works for you and to make sure that it sparks joy.
So as a designer, when we go into a home and we meet with a client, we give them a needs assessment. And at least I do. And we devote a lot of time talking about how they live. You know, let's say we're redoing their living dining room. So some of the questions are like, how do you use this space? Who uses it? How do you entertain? How do you entertain? You don't. Okay, so what do you do? So we can have a really good idea of how this space can be improved through design. So when you meet with the client, do you sit down and then ask them similar questions?
Yeah, so my first appointment always start with a conversation. We chat about their ideal life. We talk about like where they feel they've struggled with. And then I ask my clients to give me a tour of their home. And I say, tell me what you see, because I know what I see. But something that I notice might be completely insignificant to you. So I ask my clients to point out areas in their homes that they like and areas in their homes that they feel like they're struggling with.
I like that.
Because everyone's like threshold for clutter is different. So some people's before picture is going to look less cluttered than somebody else's after picture, right? And both are fine, because if that's what sparks joy for you, I want you to spark joy, right? I don't want you to live in a space where, you know, if you're a maximalist and then you're living in a minimalist space and that gives you anxiety, then that's not what we're trying to do. So, and then as we're working through each category, I would then bring it back to my client's ideal life, trying to talk to them about different ways. You know, if we're talking about the kitchen, it's like, okay, so what are the type of dishes you enjoy making, you know, on like a daily basis, or on, you know, when you're working, when you're entertaining your friends and family, what kind of dishes do you enjoy making then? Even like, because I always tell people, just because you enjoy making something, you don't have to, just because you enjoy eating something doesn't mean you have to make every single thing from scratch, right? Because you could enjoy eating pie, but you don't have to like making pie, but you can still eat pie if you go to like Pie Junkie and buy your pie there, right? So then maybe you don't need all this pie making equipment. And there's so many things that people are like, well, I really like, you know, like I used to juice, but then I realized I stopped juicing because I hated cleaning the juicer. So then I ended up giving my juicer away.
That's a clear example of something that does not spark joy.
Yeah. And like I realized I think I would just be happier if I only drank smoothies, because juicing is a lot more effort to clean the machine. And also if I really feel like a juice, it would be a special treat and I would go to a juice bar and get one there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting this. That explains a lot of how individualized, like there's not, like I said, it's not cookie cutter solution. And because people are going to get joy from different things, and people have different thresholds of clutter, like you said. That's really good. I have another one. You're saying that you ask your clients questions to make sure the space works for them, because this is exactly what we're talking about. What works for you isn't automatically going to work for them. So that's exactly what we're just talking about.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that the things that they use daily are more accessible than the things that they use once a year.
Yeah.
Right? Because some people bake cookies like every other day, whereas other people only bake cookies for, I don't know, like special holidays.
Yeah, correct.
So then in that family, maybe the cookie cutters don't need to be front and center. And everybody's like daily thing is different. So I ask so many questions. Sometimes I'll be like, well, what's that? And they're like, Helen, it's a spatula. I'm like, I know it's a spatula, but can you tell me, how often do you use this, or what do you use it for? Because if you use it for, let's say, flipping eggs, but then you have 3 other spatulas for flipping eggs, is this the right amount for you? Like, I don't know. We talk about, so I ask people a lot of questions about their habits. And, like one time I was working with a family and they had 7 jars of peanut butter open. And I had questions about that.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something then. As you're organizing homes, or as you're helping people organize their homes, I'm sure the lack of storage and the lack of space it's sometimes at the center of a lot of things. They don't know where to put boxes or bins, or maybe their kitchen is too small for the amount of kitchen tools and gadgets that they have, or maybe even seasonal items. So what do you do, or what are some of your suggestions to maximize space?
Well, the thing about the KonMari method is that we believe you already have enough storage in your home.
Hey.
So we definitely don't suggest adding more storage. We tend to use what people have. And the folding method, for example, is something that we recommend for people who want to have more clothes. And because when you fold it the KonMari way, it's more compact and you can fit more into your drawers. And I don't know, I haven't really encountered a situation where we just don't have space. Like when people have shelves and things, I do continue to use them if it's needed. But like one time I worked with this client, she had a kitchen, but the kitchen was smaller than her previous home. So she then set up a extra room in the basement, and that room was kind of like the extra small appliances, all the things that she didn't need as often, plus a backup of food and cans and all the extras. Like you shop at Costco, you don't have room to put it all up in the kitchen, so she put it in the basement. And so one of the things that I talked to her about is when we were going through their food, so many of the food was expired.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because it's in the basement. It's not a convenience spot. Sometimes they would just go and buy. And so I said, okay, let's not worry about storage. Let's just really focus on joy. So, we talked about what kind of food she enjoys making. We talked about what is the daily, habits of the family. What kind of food do they make for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner? We talked about everything. And when we finished with this kitchen, I kid you not, we eliminated that entire basement.
Wow.
We just eliminated it. It was no longer needed. So I think when people get too hung up about storage and they're not focusing on joy, because so many times people are decluttering based on how much storage they have. So let's say,
I can totally see that.
I have, in my own before and after photo, I showed this picture of my living room with 3 bookshelves. And the after picture, the 3 bookshelves were completely gone, right? And so what that tells you is that if I was just decluttering based on the storage that I have, I would probably got rid of just enough books to make it not look so cluttered.
Yeah.
But then when it's about my joy and I'm looking at each book individually and saying, okay, is this part of my ideal life? Is this supporting me to live the best life? Or is this just something that I've hung on to because it's a textbook from university, or, they're just books that people gave me. They have really no meaning. I haven't looked at those, right? And then when I realized it was that, then you let go of all the things that you no longer need. And then you're like, actually, I don't even need my bookshelves anymore. And then So I think, don't think about storage before you start, because when you think about storage, you're just, I don't know, it's not doing you any favor. In the KonMari method, we talk about you're focusing on what you're choosing to keep. We're not focusing on choosing what you're going to get rid of.
Very good. Very good. And you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, you can have a very small home and feel that you need more space to store things, and transfer that person into a bigger home And with the same mentality, they're going to think that they still need more space, and transfer them into a bigger home, and they're still going to need more space.
Yeah.
So I think this is really good. Let's not focus on storage, focus on joy. That is absolutely great advice.
Yeah. And also, like, if this is a method where when you really commit to it and you learn all these lessons going through your entire home, you change your mindset, you change the way you shop, you change the way you consume, you change the way you bring things home, right? So, and that's how you're really going to make a change. Because if you think about it, if a hoarder's place, sometimes fires happen, right? That happens often in a hoarder's home, and they lose everything. So then they get moved to a new home. But then the same thing happens because it's still the same person. You know, I've had a client that hired me and said, I don't understand why we're getting one of those dumpster trucks every so often.
It's like the mindset.
Yeah, because they're like, we get these dumpster trucks once a year, or, you know, for spring cleaning, and then we're just like getting rid of all this stuff. Then why? And then next summer or next spring, it's like the exact same thing again. I said, because you haven't changed. You're the exact same person. You know, it might just take longer if you moved into a bigger home. It might just take longer before
you fill it up with stuff.
Yeah, before the symptom starts to really show up, right? Like, I've had clients that hire me because they have renovated their entire home to have more storage. So every single wall has hidden storage, and they're like, how come I still don't have enough storage? It's like,
exactly.
Yeah, if you haven't changed the way that you think about everything and how you consume, then you are going to run out of space.
Okay, so before I let you go, because we've run out of time, and I love this conversation. I absolutely do. So what would be your top 2 things that you would tell somebody that is thinking about contacting you or looking into the KonMari method?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a broad question. What is the top 2 things? I mean, they can definitely check out my website if they want to find out more about me. I do a lot of different things because I feel like not every single person needs to hire me in their home, right?
Okay.
So, for example, if I was the person, I mean, I read the book and I did this method myself, right? And I've always been a messy person before I did the KonMari method. So I'm obviously not my own target market, because I read the book, I was able to KonMari in my home. And some people have come to like a workshop that I did and then go home and completely transform their home. I'm now doing like an online group coaching program. Some people are making great progress doing that. And I do one-on-one virtual coaching. I do one-on-one in-home sessions, right?
So you have all these options.
I have all these options because everyone needs to be supported in a different way. So if anyone is really interested in this method, I would say start with reading the book and see how far you get. Because sometimes people end up hiring me because they're like, Helen, I can't read this book. Or I read this book and I just don't see how it applies to me. I just don't understand. And, you know, or you can watch one of Marie's episodes on Netflix, even though it's not completely accurate to how we do things because it's edited for TV.
Okay.
It's still a really good like way to learn about the KonMari method, because in an episode that's like 20 minutes, you get to see her taking a family from beginning to end in her method. And I think, you know, I mean, some of the things that we wouldn't recommend, even Marie wouldn't recommend, is like working with 2 family members at once, because we believe everyone should focus on their own individual journey. But you know, when you look past stuff like that, then just watch it for the method and learn that way. That's a great way to find out more.
That's a great way to start. Read the book, watch the program, follow your account, and they can decide if they can do it on their own. Join one of your challenges, take their online coaching, or maybe even wait until the pandemic passes so they can have you at home and do it with them, right?
Yeah, because, you know, like my in-home clients, they're like, I don't want to do your online program. I want you in my house. So,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Helen. This was great.